No one expected this. Not the media. Not the fans. Not even the people closest to her. Because for years, she stayed quiet. Watching, listening, growing up under a spotlight that never dimmed. But now, Shiloh Jolie has finally spoken. And what she's revealed has left the world stunned. This isn't just another celebrity story. This is something deeper, more personal. Something that has been building quietly for years, behind closed doors, behind smiles, behind carefully controlled public images. Because when you grow up as the child of Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, your life isn't just yours. It belongs to the world. And sometimes, the truth doesn't stay hidden forever. There was a time when Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie weren't just celebrities. They were the couple. Powerful, untouchable, magnetic. Their relationship dominated headlines, not just because of who they were, but because of what they represented. Beauty, fame, influence. A kind of modern Hollywood royalty that people couldn't stop watching. Every move they made felt larger than life. And when they built a family together, the world watched even closer. Adoptions from across the globe. Biological children. A blended family that seemed to represent something bigger, something idealistic. To the public, it looked like a perfect, evolving portrait of love. But behind the cameras, things were more complicated. When Shiloh Jolie was born in 2006, it wasn't just a birth, it was a global event. People waited for the first images like it was breaking news. The world's most famous couple had just welcomed a child, and suddenly, that child became one of the most talked about figures on the planet. From the very beginning, Shiloh wasn't just a daughter. She was a symbol. Her name trended before she could walk. Her photos sold for millions. Her identity was shaped publicly before she even had the chance to understand what identity meant. Imagine that. Growing up, and never truly being unknown. As a child, Shiloh was often seen alongside her parents, on red carpets, in airports, in fleeting paparazzi shots that captured moments she never chose to share. But even then, there were subtle signs. Moments people didn't fully understand at the time. Her style, her demeanor, the way she carried herself. While other celebrity children were often styled, presented, and polished for public approval, Shiloh appeared different. More grounded, more reserved, more authentic. Angelina Jolie spoke openly in interviews about allowing her children to express themselves freely. She described Shiloh as someone who knew who she was from a young age. But the world didn't always respond with understanding. Because when you're born into fame, even self-expression becomes a headline. Behind the scenes, life inside the Jolie-Pitt household wasn't what people imagined. Yes, there were private jets, mansions, a life most could only dream of. But there was also constant movement, different countries, film sets, long periods of separation as both parents balanced demanding careers. The children grew up across continents, experiencing cultures most people never encounter, but also lacking something many take for granted: stability, routine, privacy. For Shiloh, this meant growing up in a world where everything was constantly changing, except one thing: the attention. It never stopped. And then there was the pressure. Not spoken, not always visible, but always there. The expectation of being Brad Pitt's daughter, Angelina Jolie's daughter. Two of the most recognizable faces in the world. How do you live up to that? Or more importantly, do you even want to? As the years passed, Shiloh began to step back. Less public appearances, fewer candid moments. While some of her siblings occasionally embraced the spotlight, Shiloh seemed to drift away from it. Quietly, intentionally. It wasn't dramatic. There were no announcements, no statements, just a slow, almost invisible shift. And most people didn't question it, because from the outside, everything still looked fine. But then came the cracks. Small at first, barely noticeable, until suddenly, they weren't. In 2016, the world was hit with news that no one expected. Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie were separating. After years of being seen as one of Hollywood's strongest couples, their relationship came to a sudden, very public end. And it wasn't quiet. It wasn't simple. It became one of the most talked about separations in modern celebrity history. Allegations, investigations, legal battles. The story quickly shifted from admiration to scrutiny, and at the center of it all were the children. For Shiloh, everything changed. The family dynamic she had known her entire life was suddenly fractured. Two parents who once appeared inseparable were now navigating conflict, legal processes, and emotional fallout, all under the watchful eye of the public. Imagine being a child in that situation, not just dealing with the emotional weight of a separation, but knowing that millions of people are discussing it, analyzing it, forming opinions about your family. Every headline becomes personal. Every rumor feels invasive, and every silence becomes louder. In the years that followed, both Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie largely kept details about their children private, or at least, as private as possible. Statements were controlled. Appearances were limited. But the tension didn't disappear. It lingered. In court filings, in subtle public moments, in the absence of what once seemed like unity. And through it all, Shiloh remained quiet. No interviews, no public statements, no attempts to set the record straight. Just silence. And sometimes, silence says more than words ever could. But here's the thing about silence. It doesn't mean nothing is happening. It often means everything is happening, just out of sight. Because while the world moved on to the next headline, the next celebrity story, the next viral moment, Shiloh was growing up, becoming more aware, more observant, more capable of understanding the reality behind the headlines she had once been too young to fully grasp. And with that awareness comes questions. Questions about family, about truth, about what really happened, and what was left unsaid. Over time, subtle changes began to surface again. Not dramatic, not loud, but noticeable. Choices that hinted at something deeper. A shift in identity. A quiet assertion of independence. A sense that Shiloh was no longer just observing, but beginning to define her own narrative. And then, something changed. 4 years, she had stayed silent. 4 years, the world speculated, guessed, assumed. 4 years, her story was told about her, never by her. Until now. Because what Shiloh Jolie has finally begun to reveal isn't just surprising. It challenges everything people thought they knew about that family, about that relationship, about what really happened behind the scenes. And the most shocking part? This isn't coming from tabloids. It's not coming from anonymous sources. It's not speculation. It's her voice, her perspective, her truth. But to understand what she's about to reveal, you have to understand what she went through, what she saw, what she felt, and what she's been holding in all this time. Because the story the world believes may not be the full story at all. And what comes next changes everything. When the separation between Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie became public, it didn't unfold quietly behind closed doors. It exploded. Headlines spread across the world in minutes. Speculation turned into accusation. Private pain became public discussion. And suddenly, the image of a perfect family began to collapse in real time. But what most people didn't fully understand was this. For the children, especially Shiloh Jolie, this wasn't just news. It was reality. At the center of the separation were serious claims. Reports of tension, of conflict, of a breaking point that had been building long before the world ever saw it. There were investigations, legal proceedings, statements carefully worded, deliberately vague. Both sides remained controlled in public, but beneath that control, something deeper was unfolding. Something the children were witnessing firsthand. Imagine being in that position. You're no longer just a child. You're aware. You see the arguments that aren't filmed. You feel the shifts in energy when people stop speaking. You notice who's present and who isn't. And you begin to understand that the story the world is being told is only part of the truth. For Shiloh, those years were critical, not just because of what was happening around her, but because of how it shaped her understanding of family, of trust, of identity. After the separation, Custody became one of the most sensitive and complex aspects of the situation. Multiple children, different ages, different needs, and a legal system trying to determine what was best in a situation that had no easy answers. The public saw fragments, court updates, legal motions, brief statements, but they didn't see the day-to-day impact, the emotional weight, the confusion, the quiet moments when everything felt uncertain. Reports began to surface suggesting that the relationships within the family were shifting, that bonds were changing, that distance, both physical and emotional, was growing. But again, nothing was ever fully confirmed, because silence still controlled the narrative. And Shiloh? She stayed quiet, but not invisible. Over the years, she appeared occasionally, older, more composed, more self-aware. There were glimpses of her life, but never enough to tell the full story. Fans noticed changes, her style evolving, her presence becoming more grounded, more intentional. There was a sense that she was becoming her own person, separate from the image the world had placed on her. But behind that evolution, there were questions no one could answer. What was her relationship with her father? What did she truly feel about the separation? What had she experienced during those years the public could only speculate about? Because here's what made the situation even more complex. This wasn't just a private family conflict. This was a global narrative. Two of the biggest names in Hollywood, every detail analyzed, every rumor amplified, and every silence interpreted. For years, neither Shiloh Jolie nor her siblings publicly addressed the deeper emotional reality of what had happened. There were no tell-all interviews, no dramatic revelations, no attempts to take control of the story, just distance and growth. But something began to shift, not in a loud, explosive way. In a quiet, almost subtle way, observers started noticing small but meaningful details. Changes in how Shiloh presented herself, the way she moved through public spaces, the choices she made about identity, about expression, about who she was becoming. And then came one of the most talked about moments. A moment that, on the surface, seemed simple, but to those paying attention, it meant everything. Shiloh appeared at public events not as Brad Pitt's daughter, or Angelina Jolie's daughter, but as herself, confident, independent, unapologetically authentic. It wasn't what she said, it was what she didn't say. Because sometimes, silence isn't avoidance. Sometimes, it's preparation. Behind the scenes, insiders began to suggest something had changed. That Shiloh was no longer just observing her family's story. She was beginning to process it, to understand it, and eventually, to speak on it. But when? And how? And more importantly, what would she say? Because whatever that moment would be, it wouldn't just be personal. It would be explosive. Years passed. The legal battles between Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie continued in various forms. Some rulings, some reversals, some ongoing disputes that never fully seemed to settle. To the public, it became background noise, another long-running celebrity conflict. But for the family, it was still very real. And during that time, something else was happening quietly. Shiloh was growing into adulthood. That transition changes everything. Because as a child, you experience events. But as you grow older, you interpret them. You form opinions. You remember details differently. You begin to question what you were told, and what you witnessed. And eventually, you decide what your truth is. Those close to the situation began hinting that Shiloh had her own perspective. One that didn't fully align with the narratives the public had been given. One shaped not by headlines, but by lived experience. And still, she said nothing. Until now. Because recently, something shifted in a way that could no longer be ignored. A moment, a statement, a decision. Something that signaled, clearly, that Shiloh was ready. Ready to stop being a silent figure in someone else's story. Ready to reclaim her voice. But here's where it gets even more intense. Because what she's begun to express isn't just emotional. It's revealing. It touches on family dynamics, on loyalty, on the reality of growing up in a household the world believed it understood, but never truly saw. And those closest to the situation? They weren't prepared for it. Because when someone who has stayed silent for years finally begins to speak, they don't hold back. The shift wasn't loud, but it was undeniable. A subtle break from the past. A clear step toward independence. A message without needing to say too much, yet. But the implications? They were massive. Because for the first time, people started asking a different question. Not what happened between Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, but what did their children experience? And that question changes everything. Because now, the story isn't about a celebrity breakup. It's about perspective, memory, truth. And Shiloh Jolie is at the center of it. Those who followed her journey closely say that what's coming next isn't just a statement. It's a turning point. A moment that reframes years of speculation. A moment that forces people to reconsider everything they thought they knew. And just when it seemed like the story had already been told, she began to speak. Not in headlines. Not in interviews filled with rehearsed answers. But in a way that felt real, measured, personal. And then, she said something that no one saw coming. Something that shifted the entire narrative. Something that made even those closest to the situation pause. Because it wasn't just about the past. It was about how she saw it. How she felt it, how it shaped who she is today. And what she said next changed everything. There's a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable at first, when everything shifts. No dramatic press conference. No explosive tell-all interview. No headline crafted for maximum impact. Just a choice. A personal decision that, to most people, might seem small. But in this story, it was everything. Because after years of silence, Shiloh Jolie finally did something that spoke louder than any interview ever could. She began defining herself on her own terms. And the truth everyone is reacting to? It isn't a single sentence. It isn't one shocking claim. It's something deeper, more real, more unsettling for those who thought they already understood the story. The truth is this. Shiloh is no longer living inside the identity the world created for her. For years, she was introduced as their daughter, Brad Pitt's child, Angelina Jolie's child. A name tied to legacy, to fame, to expectation. But now, she's stepping outside of that. Sources close to the situation, and subtle public developments, have pointed to a powerful shift. Shiloh has been distancing herself from the public identity tied to her father's name. Not through loud statements, not through confrontation, but through quiet, deliberate choices. And one of those choices sent shockwaves. Reports began circulating that Shiloh had taken steps toward dropping Pitt from her name in personal settings. Not as an act of rebellion, not as a headline-driven move, but as a reflection of how she sees herself. And just like that, the narrative changed. Because this wasn't gossip anymore. This was identity. For some, it raised questions. For others, it confirmed long-held suspicions. And for many, it was simply shocking. Why would she do that? What does it mean? What happened behind the scenes to lead to this moment? But here's where the story becomes more human and less sensational. Because what Shiloh is expressing isn't necessarily anger. It isn't a public accusation. It isn't about choosing sides in a way the media can easily package. It's about something far more complex. It's about growing up in a fractured environment and trying to make sense of it. It's about being a child in the middle of a conflict that the entire world watched, but never truly understood. It's about forming your own truth, when everyone else has already decided what that truth should be. And perhaps most importantly, it's about control. For most of her life, Shiloh had very little control over how she was seen. Her name, her image, her story, all shaped by forces outside of her. But now, she's taking that control back. And that's what makes this moment so powerful. Because the truth isn't a scandal. It's a shift. A quiet but undeniable declaration. I decide who I am. Still, the reaction was immediate. The media picked it up quickly. Headlines began forming almost instantly. Speculation returned, stronger than ever. Was this about her relationship with Brad Pitt? Was it influenced by her bond with Angelina Jolie? Was it something deeper, something the public still doesn't fully understand? Everyone had a theory, but very few had answers. Because, once again, Shiloh didn't explain. And that silence, it carried more weight than any explanation ever could. Because it forced people to confront an uncomfortable reality. They were never entitled to her story in the first place. As discussion spread, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about a celebrity family anymore. It was about identity in the shadow of fame. About what it means to grow up with the world watching your every move, and still try to become your own person. Experts, commentators, and fans began to shift the conversation. Less focus on drama, more focus on perspective. Because suddenly, people weren't just asking, what happened between Brad and Angelina? They were asking, what does it feel like to be their child? And that question changes everything. Because it removes the glamour, the spectacle, the illusion, and replaces it with something real. A child navigating adulthood. A young person trying to understand where they belong. In a story that was never fully theirs to begin with. And in that context, Shiloh's choices begin to make sense. Not as rebellion, not as shock value, but as clarity. A quiet, grounded clarity that says, I am not what you assumed. Meanwhile, both Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie have remained largely private in response. No dramatic counterstatements. No public disputes over her decisions. And that silence, from them as well, speaks volumes. Because sometimes, the most powerful responses aren't spoken. They're accepted, or at the very least, respected. As the world continues to react, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. This moment isn't the end of a story. It's the beginning of a new one. A story where Shiloh Jolie isn't just part of a legacy. She's defining her own path. And that path might not look anything like what people expected. There may never be a full explanation. No detailed breakdown of everything that happened behind closed doors. No perfectly wrapped narrative that answers every question. But maybe that's the point. Because real life doesn't come with clean endings. Especially not in families. Especially not in situations this complex. What we're witnessing isn't a revelation designed for headlines. It's something quieter, more human, more lasting. A young woman stepping out of the shadow of two of the most famous people in the world, and saying, in her own way, this is who I am. And maybe that's the truth that shocked everyone. Not because it was loud, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. Because after years of speculation, assumptions, and narratives built by outsiders, the truth didn't come as a scandal. Came as identity. And sometimes, that's the most powerful statement of all. Because sometimes, the truth doesn't just shock the world. It changes everything forever.